Today, we'll be handing out our report card to none other than JP Crawford. Yeah, I wonder what grade we're going to give him. Plus, would you rather shoot for upside or the safe play in a Bryce Miller or Brian Wu trade? We'll discuss that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. On the show today, we continue handing out grades to the 2023 Mariners with JP Crawford. We'll also talk about potential returns in a Bryce Miller or Brian Wu trade. Would you rather take a big swing on upside, go the safe route in one of those deals? Talk about that a little later on in the show. But Colby, we got to start with JP Crawford, continuing our report card series here. Crawford coming off of a career year by far, 266, 380, 438. That was his triple slash line this past season. 134 WRC plus. He was worth 4.9 FWAR. Just struck out 19.6% of the time. He did walk 14.7% of the time, which is also a career high for him. He hit 19 bombs, which is by far a career high for him. He had 65 runs driven in as well, which is also a career high for him. So career highs across the board, essentially, for JP Crawford. It was a career year by definition for the Mariners captain. So it seems pretty straightforward, but Colby, what grade are you giving Mr. Crawford?
Tough. I'm going to go with an A+, and he gets the only A+ on the entire team. Led the American League in walks, the 13th highest WRC plus in all of baseball amongst qualified hitters. 4.9 wins, 19 homers, would have been 5 WAR and 20 homers if not for a brief stint on the IL. He played his normal solid average defense, always seemed to come through with the bases loaded, unlike a lot of his other teammates. He was just everything. He was a vocal leader. He was kind of the epitome of what the Mariners claim they want to be, and he's a guy who went away for the winter. He worked on himself. He made changes, both physically and mechanically, and he came back and he was probably the second best shortstop in the American League, and only a career year from Kyle Seager is going to prevent him from winning. Corey, yes, is going to prevent him from winning a Silver Slugger at the position, and it's not something we ever thought we would say about JP Crawford. So when you kind of take everything into account, the solid defense, the career year at the plate, the walks, the at bats with the bases loaded, the homers, the leadership qualities, he was everything you could possibly hope for and more. Kind of in his first attempt at being the unquestioned leader of the Mariners offensive group. Gino certainly has leadership qualities, and we know Tom Murphy has leadership qualities, and there's never just one guy per se, but when you really look at the Mariners over the last 5 years, it was Kyle Seager for a while who was that guy. Then it was Mitch Haniger who was that guy, and this year it was kind of JP's turn to kind of step up and be the guy in that regard. And he did, by all accounts, he's loved by everybody in the clubhouse. He's a fan favorite. Everybody seems to acknowledge that he is the captain of this ball club, and they should probably just go ahead and make that official. He's everything you want, a player to be for the Seattle Mariners. He cares about the fans. He cares about the community. He's kind of ingratiated himself into a community that he didn't have any ties to previously. It's not like he's from this area. He has no reason to connect to this area as deeply as he has, and it just feels like he's exactly what you want. He's, you know, the epitome of development, because remember, the Phillies gave up on this guy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they traded him for, you know, a pretty good package, but they essentially gave up on him. They decided they'd rather have Gene Segura as their shortstop than JP Crawford. And there were some tough moments in JP's Mariners career early, and we just kind of looked at him and said, he's probably an average bat and an average glove, and that's probably who he is at 28 years old. And he came out this year and he proved everybody wrong. I don't know if that's fair to expect this from JP going forward. There's a pretty good chance this was his career year, but I don't think that there's really any reason to suspect that he's just going to go back and be kind of a fringe league average bat like he was for most of his career. I don't know if he's got 20 home run season in him. I think he's probably going to tap out now somewhere between 12 and 15 for the next few years, but who cares if he's doing more damage, if he's hitting more line drives. He's kind of forced his way into being a part of this core group of guys instead of a ancillary player. He was kind of a role player before this year. Now his 30% increase in offense, as well as what he means to that clubhouse, he's definitely part of your core. He's right there with Julio. He's there with Cal, you know, George, and et cetera. Like, he is a part of this core, and he's earned that right. And he is, again, by all accounts, he's the captain of your baseball club. So hard to give JP anything less than an A+ without kind of being laughed at.
Yeah.
After the year he just put out there.
Yeah. A+. He has established himself fully as a part of the core, like you said. He has established himself as one of the 5 to 7 best shortstops in the entire game. And if you ask Jerry Dipoto, if you ask Scott Service, if you ask Justin Hollander, if you ask Andy McKay, anyone on the Mariners coaching staff, what does the ideal Mariner look like for that culture? It's JP Crawford. It's absolutely, unequivocally JP Crawford. And not only does he embody that to a T, he posts. He's posting now. He was an elite bat this year. He was tied 13th in Major League Baseball amongst all qualified hitters in WRC+. He's tied with Cody Bellinger. We all know how good Cody Bellinger was this year. Like, JP was very, very, very good. Not just for his standards or by his standards, or, you know, relative to what he's done for the rest of his career, which, I mean, is like in a complete other area code from where he was for the rest of his career. Just relative to the rest of Major League Baseball, the upper echelon of Major League Baseball players, he was that good. And I mean, you know, some of it is due to what he was able to accomplish over at Driveline. Obviously, they were able to add some bat speed, and obviously that was a great foundation to build from in general with JP, with his elite plate discipline. And obviously that carried over to this year, and he posted a career high in walk rate. And on top of that, was able to add a significant amount of power. Now, you know, back when JP was considered to be the best prospect in baseball, or one of the 5 best prospects in baseball when he was still in the Phillies organization, there was an assumption that power would be a part of his game to a certain extent, that he would be, you know, 12 to 20 home runs. And we got that this year. And that's, you know, partly because of the added bat speed. He's now able to do damage on pitches inside of the zone. He's not just kind of a, you know, an on-base merchant, which, I mean, he's still elite in that respect, but now that's not the only tool he has offensively. And while, yeah, maybe this is the absolute ceiling for him, maybe a 134 WRC+ is something that he won't even sniff again. Maybe he, you know, levels out at maybe, you know, 115 to 120 for the rest of his career on a per year basis. But this is a different JP Crawford. You know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of talk about regression. We're going to have conversations about regression for him in 2024 and, you know, what that kind of looks like. But that, to me, is not going to be, you know, back to what he was in 2021 and 2022, because he's made actual mechanical changes. He didn't just fluke his way into this level of production. He's actually made changes that he's going to carry over into 2024 and build upon heading into 2024 and in future years. So we have to analyze JP from that perspective, not from what he was before this year, just what has he done since then, and what does regression look from that aspect, you know, with that in mind. So yeah, again, sensational season for JP. And the defense as well. I know the analytics say otherwise, but he is at least an average defender. At least an average defender. I mean, there's so many big plays that he made this year. When you pair that with his leadership qualities as well, I mean, he's one of the most valuable players in Major League Baseball, somewhat for reasons that just can't be quantified. All right, we're going to be talking about a poll that Colby has been running on the Locked On Mariners Twitter, and we're going to be announcing a new giveaway in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Bird Dogs. There is nothing in this world that's more comfortable than a pair of shorts from Bird Dogs. Coming in a variety of colors with breathable, stretchy fabric and built-in underwear, Bird Dog shorts are perfect for going to the movies, hiking your favorite trail, just chilling on the couch watching football. In fact, they're perfect for recording a podcast in. Trust me, I would know. And not only do they have a wide selection of shorts, but they also have joggers, sweatpants, polos, and more. It's time to look good, feel good, and play good. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb or enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise you. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So, Colby, you're giving away some cards. Cards are you giving away?
Yeah, so it's been a while, since I've given away more things from my personal collection, something Ty has never done. But yeah, we're giving away some
tickets.
cards.
I've taken the money out of my pockets to deliver to our listeners, our loyal listeners.
And how do you think I acquired these cards, Ty? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Snap
Just
your fingers.
Sit down and be quiet.
They magically appear.
No. So amongst the cards we're giving away, there are 4 cards total this time around. It will be a tiered giveaway like we've done in the past. Ty will explain all this in a second, but quick look at the cards. We have a Brian Wu autograph card. We have this Matt Brash autograph card.
Nice.
We have this Bryce Miller autograph card. Bryce with a very clean signature, by the way.
That was good.
And then maybe the grand prize. I mean, depending on how you feel about each of these players, but this is a autographed Harry Ford card.
Sir Harry.
So, yes, we have Harry Ford, Bryce Miller, Matt Brash, and Brian Wu that we are giving away. And Ty will tell you how you can enter and kind of the rules of the whole giveaway here.
All right, so the giveaway is running starting now, until October 30th. You have until essentially midnight on October 30th to enter. All you have to do to enter is subscribe to the YouTube channel, or Locked On Mariners YouTube channel. If you're just listening on a podcast platform, head on over to youtube.com, type in Locked On Mariners, hit the subscribe button, and then all you have to do from that point forward is comment on one of our videos that is posted between now and October 30th. You can post or you can comment once every video. That will give you multiple entries into the giveaway. And then we're just going to randomly pick a couple of videos and randomly pick some comments from those videos for the winners. We'll be doing that on like a random wheel or random name generator or something. We always use something like that. The terms and conditions, full terms and conditions, are down in the description of this episode. But to quickly just go over what our goal is ultimately with this giveaway, like Colby said, this is going to be a tiered giveaway. So we have some subscriber goals that we want to reach. And once we reach that goal, we're going to give away that card. And if we don't reach that goal by October 30th, we're not giving away that card. So at 9,750 subscribers, I think we're at 9,320 last time I checked. So at 9,750 subscribers, we're going to be giving away the Matt Brash card. At 10,000 subscribers, we're going to be giving away the Bryce Miller card. At 10,250 subscribers, we'll be giving away the Brian Wu card, and at 10,500 subscribers, we'll be giving away the Harry Ford card. So again, full terms and conditions will be in the description. All you have to do is click the link to check out all that good stuff. All right, so Colby, over on the Locked On Mariners Twitter account over the last week or so, you've been running a few polls with some hypothetical trades, not necessarily trades that you personally would do, just to gauge the fan base in a way and see, like, how they value Logan Gilbert, or how they value X player that might be on another team that a lot of people are talking about as a potential trade candidate. But this time around, the latest poll that you posted is just posing a couple of potential trade targets against one another. That's Jazz Chisholm of the Miami Marlins and Lars Nootbaar of the St. Louis Cardinals, who we've talked a lot about over the last few months with those rumors that just never died about the Cardinals and the Mariners. It seems like everyone wants Lars Nootbaar in the Mariners community on the Mariners. And to no surprise, he is winning that poll right now. Last time I checked, I think it was like 52% to 48%, 53% to 47%, somewhere in there. So it's pretty close. And the gap has closed over the last 12 or so hours. Yeah, your general reaction to that poll, to the response to that poll, and then just your overall thoughts on Jazz versus Lars Nootbaar.
Sure. Kind of a common theme lately is people sure only like to leave comments if they're negative about the player, or
You're one to talk.
I mean, like, I don't know what you're talking about. I am Mr. Sunshine, but it's interesting, that a large chunk of the comments that I've read on this particular poll, which again is pretty close. I think it's 54-46 right now. So, it's pretty close with over almost 1,200 votes. That's pretty close. But the overwhelming number of comments are that neither of these guys are any good. I don't want either of them, which is a lie. To say that Lars Nootbaar isn't good and can't help you is a lie. To say that Jazz Chisholm isn't good and can't help you, that's a lie. So either you're lying or you're stupid. I mean, you could pick. I'm not going to tell you what you are, but you're either a liar or you're stupid.
Sure.
Those are your options. So I think a lot of that like stems from this idea that like, oh, well, like those guys aren't stars, so they can't help the Mariners. And that's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
That's stupid to sit here and be like, I only want Shohei Ohtani. If I don't get Shohei Ohtani, then like it's not even worth doing anything. Okay, fine. You can think that way, but then you don't get to complain about any move Jerry makes ever again, ever. Because you've already said that if he doesn't do exactly what you want, you're not going to like what he does. So don't be an idiot. Don't sit here like, oh, Lars Nootbaar's not even that good. I don't want him because he can't. Because he only
dumb idiot.
Someone
should start a counter down in the comments.
He only helps me win 2 extra games. Hey, how many games did the Mariners miss the playoffs by this year? Oh yeah, imagine that. Stop it. Perfection is the enemy of good, of progress. You have to make progress with your roster. You're never going to have a perfect roster. That's not going to happen. You have to make your roster better, and you do that by acquiring good players. Lars Nootbaar, Jazz Chisholm, they're both good players. All right.
Sure.
Anybody saying otherwise is dumb. Like, just call it what it is. Are they perfect players? No. Do they each have their warts? Yeah, they do. And they've been expressed. Jazz Chisholm is a guy who can't really stay healthy, or at least he hasn't yet. He also has some strikeout issues, which we know Mariner fans are petrified of a little too much, I would say. And then you look at Lars Nootbaar and like, he's fine. He's a good player, but he's not really an all-star. Like, there's very little upside there. He kind of is what he is. He's just a solid, good everyday player. It's not like adding Lars Nootbaar all of a sudden makes you the best lineup in baseball. Neither of these guys do. Unless, Jazz Chisholm hits and he plays 150 games for the first time in his career, then maybe, because there is upside there. So I do think it's interesting that, obviously the negativity, which isn't that surprising. But it's interesting that, at least just based on this, right? This one poll, the Mariners or Mariner fans appear to value let's just say like the safe 3-win guy versus the guy who could be a 6-7 win player. And, keep in mind, the poll did not specify that we would be trading Bryce Miller or Brian Wu. It was just, which would you rather have in a vacuum? And so Nootbaar won. And again, obviously things could change if we said, okay, you're adding Lourdes Gurriel and Gleyber Torres or whatever, right? Now, which one do you want to finish off the offseason? Then it's different. It might be different because you say, well, I've got a couple of steady bats that I trust. Now I'll take the shot on Jazz. Or if it's, I took a couple risks here, I want some safety, I think it's Lars. So I do think that, the whole safety versus upside debate is a good one. It's one worth having. And it is one that is tough to quantify in a vacuum of just like, hey, do you want player A or player B? But overall, I do think it's interesting that Mariner fans are, for the most part, choosing to play things relatively safe this offseason. And I don't think that that's necessarily the way to go. Now, I'm not saying that Jazz is the guy that you go out and you prioritize. I don't even know if he's going to be available, but those are just two guys that honestly kind of perfectly epitomize upside versus safety. They both have 3 years of club control left. Like, and by the way, Ty, we did get one person who did mention that Lars and Otani are tight, so they'd rather have Lars Nootbaar.
Right.
So
Fully expected that. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I do think it's an interesting comparison. I do think that it's an interesting debate. I just want to make sure that we're not sitting here going like, oh, the Mariners signed Lourdes Gurriel, but he's not Otani, so who cares? Like, let's not be that fan base.
Right. It's like in the Jim Bowden article today talking about Stto. He's like, if they don't get Stto and they don't sign Bellinger and Otani, how could they possibly build a roster that's competitive, for the postseason and a World Series? It's like there are a lot of ways.
They didn't just finish a game back of Texas and Houston who were playing.
There are a lot of ways to still do that. That's why I've said, like, you don't necessarily need to add another guy to your core this offseason to still have a great offseason to build a roster that is capable of winning a World Series, because your core as it currently stands is very, very good. It's one of the best young cores in Major League Baseball. So anyway, you can, like, I'm not saying no to Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
I'm not saying no to Shohei Ohtani, but again, like, if you're adding another core player, it's this offseason, it's probably Ohtani, or it's probably Bellinger, it's probably Stto. And as far as Stto goes, like, do you even consider him part of the core? Because he's only going to be here for a year.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I would. Yeah.
So we're gonna talk more about Jazz and Newt and some other options and a Bryce Miller or Brian Wu deal, because, like, let's face it, right? Like, even though that you didn't specify in the poll that it would be for Miller or Wu, that's probably the only way that you're getting Jazz Chisholm or Lars Nootbaar, at least that I can think of. So we're going to go over that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. October baseball is back, folks, and you can make your postseason debut with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Join FanDuel today, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKDON, to create your new account. And you can get in on the action from the first pitch until the final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. And if you don't want to wait the whole game to get a win, predict what will happen in the next at bat with quick bets. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So we're talking about Jazz Chisholm and Lars Nootbaar. A couple of, I would say that Lars has been a popular potential trade target amongst Mariners fans. Jazz Chisholm, not really, maybe more so a couple of years ago, but not as of late. But that's someone that Colby brought up as an exercise in safe plays against upside, which it's weird to consider Lars Nootbaar a safe play, because, I mean, he's only played 117 games as a career high in a season, which is good. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's not 140, it's not 150, whatever. He's done that once. He played 108 games the year before, and then he played 58 the year before that, and he's been fine. He's been good. Like, he was a 2.6 F4 player in 2022. He was a 3.2 F4 player in 2023, and that a lot of that was really the second half that he went on. He had a really, really good second half. Lars ended up slashing 261, 367, 418 this past season with 14 home runs, 46 RBI, 11 steals. So, I mean, like, yeah, if he ends up playing 140, 150 games, maybe he's like a 4.5 win player. He's a fringe all-star right now. I don't necessarily think that there's a lot more to tap into there. It's just, I think the numbers just overall would look better if he played more games. That's really it. But I think that, like, essentially, like, the pace that he's on is pretty much who he is. As for Jazz Chisholm, I mean, he's a star in theory, and only in theory. like he has the makings of it. He has, one of the best personalities in baseball. He can hit for a ton of home runs, and he can steal some bags and play, highlight worthy defense. Problem is, he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's played over 100 games once in his career. That was back in 2021. He played 124 games. Ever since then, though, he played 60 in 2022 and he played 97 in 2023. This year, though, in just 97 games, he did hit 19 bombs. He did steal 22 bags. The problem, though, is that he's running a career strikeout rate of 29.2%. So when we're talking about the a potential for a Bryce Miller, Brian Wu trade, like if you're trading one of those guys, I would say this. Like, I understand Chisholm's strikeout issues. I understand his rough splits against lefties. And I understand that there might be some clubhouse concerns on that front. Whatever. I don't know a ton about that. I'm just acknowledging that just for the sake of it. But if you hit on him, if he actually is able to stay healthy and he reaches the ceiling that I think he has, to me, he is by far the best player that you could feasibly get. Like, that version of Jazz Chisholm is by far the best player you could feasibly get for Miller or Wu. Whereas, like, with Nootbaar, you're getting a good player. You're getting a guy that definitely helps you. You're getting like a fringe all-star caliber player there in Nootbaar, and maybe he makes a couple of all-star teams in the future. But that's nowhere close to what the upside of Chisholm is. Chisholm, to me, like, if everything goes well, he's like an MVP candidate potentially. Like, he's a 6-win guy. Like, if everything goes right. And again, that's banging on a lot. But again, if you're looking for the best return from a Miller trade, and maybe getting a guy that maybe you typically wouldn't if he had more established time in the big leagues, I think it's Chisholm. But yeah, what do you think, Colby?
Yeah, it was interesting. I send you like all the polls after I post them, and you very condescendingly give me your answer. And I believe on this one you said
as
in
I
a
always
second do. Or like in a heartbeat or something like
I said absolutely. Yeah, I said absolutely.
Yeah. Which is interesting. And by the way, I'm specifying when I said Miller for Jazz, not this particular poll question, but very specifically Bryce Miller for Jazz Chisholm. You said absolutely. I'm a little more on the fence about this. I do like Jazz. They both have 3 years of club control left, so that's not really a factor in this. And I do think that fans are overvaluing like avoiding strikeouts. I know, I get it, right? The Mariners want to avoid strikeouts, but hey, if you replace Jazz Chisholm with Teoscar Hernandez, I mean, if his career number, if he just strikes out 29% of the time, you actually did improve your strikeout problem. But that's more about a Teoscar. That's more a Teoscar problem than Jazz being good at that particular thing. So yeah, you kind of look at both of these guys, they both fill a hole. Chisholm is either your second baseman or he's, outfielder who can play center field, and Nootbaar is an outfielder who could also play center field. So, specifically,
and he also helps you get Ohtani, Colby,
because that's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're both left-handed hitters. That doesn't really help. They're both, I think, pretty high floor. If they both play 120 games, I think they're each worth at least 3 wins. So yeah, I think I'd probably rather swing for the upside. And I do think that there's this idea that Miller should get you like an established star. And it's like, okay, but who?
Yeah.
Who's an established star out there on a team that would want Bryce Miller? And I don't think that star can be a guy who's just a 1-year deal. I don't think Juan Soto is the answer here. That's a 1-year fix. And
he's not signing with you. He's not signing with you.
No. So who's that guy? I don't know if Miller is like, I wouldn't trade Miller for either of these guys straight up. I wouldn't be upset if they did. Like, I understand the process, but I just wouldn't do it. So I don't know, man. This is tough. And I do also, understand the people who are like, well, just don't trade any of them and just go get a different guy and go get a different bat. And I understand that. But again, you look at the free agent class this year, not great. And when you go and you look at the teams, like think of the teams right now that are going to sell pieces this winter. They're not trying to win in 2024. There's not a lot of those teams.
It's a few. Yeah.
and most of them have already sold all their interesting pieces.
Yeah, it's a
What do
very
the what
finite amount.
yeah, what do the Oakland A's have that are really gonna jazz you up if you trade Bryce Miller or
Yeah,
Brian Wu
jazz
for?
you up, huh?
Yeah, just
There you go.
like nothing. You're not excited if they trade Bryce Miller for Brent Rooker. You're probably telling Jerry to, find a new job if he did that. So, and like, who are the other teams? Detroit's on the upswing. Kansas City's on the upswing.
Yep.
You know,
Washington.
Washington's on the upswing.
Yep.
Like, who are the teams that are like, we're not going to be good. I mean, New York's never going to sell, and there's not really anything in New York, anyways, that you're excited to trade for. I mean, you're not getting Aaron Judge, so you're not giving up
Right.
6 years of Miller for Glaber Torres. Like, who are the teams? Who are the bad, terrible teams that are entering this year,
Right.
knowing they don't stand a chance in 2024? There's like 2 or 3, and none of them really have much to offer you. You're
Well,
going
and
to have
that's
to
the
get
thing too
creative. You're
is
going to have to trade with other contenders.
yeah. And the thing too here is, because of how bad the free agent market is, there's going to be a premium that's naturally placed on hitters that
Mhm.
are available via trade. So, you got to be smart about, like, if you are going to trade Bryce Miller, Brian Wu this offseason, you got to be smart about what you're actually trading them for. Are you actually getting what you feel is proper value for those guys? Because again, you have something that a lot of teams don't have. And that's one of the hottest, if not the hottest commodity in all of baseball: young, controllable, established major league pitching. And you're willing to trade it.
Mhm.
So, yeah, like, to me, Lars Nootbaar would be a fine return, but an underwhelming return for Bryce Miller, especially if you're not
Right.
getting anything else along with
Right.
Lars.
I mean, and
Chisholm, I
it's
mean, it's scary. It's definitely
yeah.
scary because, like, it could really, really work out. Like, you could get one of the best bats in Major League Baseball for multiple
Mhm.
years for Bryce Miller,
Put
or
Jazz and Julio on in the same lineup,
that'd
and
be amazing. Like, the vibes would be unreal on
like
that team.
you have a legitimate shot to have 2 guys who are 8-win players if they reach their ceilings. Like,
Yeah. But on the flip side of that, you could get a guy that doesn't play more than 100 games for you per season.
yeah.
That maybe, if these rumors about him in the clubhouse are true, causes some disruption there.
Mhm.
It's not a great fit, and he strikes out a lot. He doesn't see
Yeah.
the Z. Like, he doesn't execute your offensive philosophy.
Right. Um, but yeah, it's tough to say, man. There are a lot of avenues you can go, but it does feel like you're going to have to trade with another team that's competing, for or
Yeah.
thinks that they can win the World Series next year. Because I think that probably 20 to 25 teams in baseball look at next year and say we can get into the wild card, like we can get into the playoffs next year.
Mhm.
And the other 5 teams or so that really aren't thinking that way, they don't have a lot to offer. Like, even the
Yeah.
White Sox have been very hesitant, apparently, to discuss Dylan Cease and Luis Robert. And at that point, like, okay, I'm supposed to get excited about Yoan Moncada?
Yeah.
No. Like, so it's just one of those things, man. Like, it's going to be a really interesting market. We might see more 3-team trades than we've ever seen. We'll
Mhm.
definitely see more teams trading with other contenders. It's it used to be about half the league was like, yeah, we're sellers.
Mhm.
That's not the case anymore. You add the extra wild card. You see teams, constantly get in with, 83, 84 wins. And here's the thing: the difference between a 75-win team and an 84-win team, not that big of a difference.
Yeah.
So teams are less apt to sell,
I mean, the
and
Diamondbacks are literally competing for a trip to the World Series after
sure,
winning 84 games in the
right,
regular season. Like,
right. So
and teams are seeing that, right? Teams are seeing that, and that's uh,
right, and that's the difference between 84 and 75 wins is not typically $35 million in free agent costs. It's our young guys hit, or if this veteran happens to pop this year. Like,
yeah,
that's the difference, and that's why teams are less likely to trade those guys,
yeah,
because if it doesn't cost you any extra money from an ownership perspective, it doesn't cost you any more money, and you still have good odds of making the playoffs, where you will make more money. Why
yeah,
not just hold on to guys and see what happens?
yeah. So we're already running over time, but I know I said we would talk about some other options, so I'll just quickly go over that. Um, Jazz Chisholm isn't the only upside play you could go for here with Miller. You could trade him to Baltimore for Colton Cowser, Hesse Kierstad, or one of those guys, right? Like you're not going to get Jackson Holiday, but like they obviously have quite a few young guys there that would be very interesting that have relatively high ceilings. And maybe you could get two of those guys, right? Depending on what the deal looks like. Maybe it's like Colton Cowser and Joey Ortiz, something like that, So that's another one to keep an eye on there. Obviously the Rays are going to have interest. The Guardians will have interest. I just don't really know if there's any deals there that make sense for both teams, like for what the Mariners are going to want. Like, because I think if the Mariners are trading Bryce Miller to the Rays, they're probably asking for Randy Arozarena right now.
Plus. Yeah.
And I don't think the Rays are going to do that, but
no,
you never know.
Throwing Logan Gilbert into the mix maybe, but like, you might have to trade, Miller for the Bryce Miller equivalent. You might be able to trade Miller for an established guy for 2 years. Like 29 other teams in baseball are going to want Bryce Miller and Brian Wu. Yeah. So it's not going to be a lack of the market. That is the reason they're here. It's going to be the lack of good offers essentially. So we'll see what the Mariners decide to do. But there's a lot of routes they could go. They could go take the big swing on a guy like Jazz. They can go get a couple of like solid but somewhat unproven guys from Baltimore. Maybe it's just something as simple as Bryce Miller for Matt McClain in Cincinnati, and they just do a 1-for-1 swap, something like that. So we'll see what they do. But we're going to be talking about trading one of these starters probably all winter until they do it. So we'll have plenty of time to name other names. But that's just the general idea. Is would you rather trade Bryce Miller or Brian Wu for an upside play where the ceiling is most valuable player, or would you rather get a guy who's got a much higher floor but a much lower ceiling as the headliner essentially of any deal? Right. So let us know.
Let us know in the comments below what you think about all this, what you would do this offseason with regards to Miller and Wu, and what kind of returns you would like to see on those guys if they were traded. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, SDANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And again, be sure to enter our card giveaway. Check out the terms and conditions down in the description below. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.